Hey you, welcome back to the library. Let's finish off the year right. If you're new to the channel, these end of the year videos are tied to the Living History Project on Game-Rave.com, where we've been reliving the release schedule of the PlayStation in real time. Having started on the 20th anniversary, we're now 6 years in with the games of 2001. Normally, I'd be discussing the top 10 games that redefined the hobby and the roads they pave for future content. But something about 2001 shifted that dynamic, and with that dynamic shifting, so too must shift how we view the year. 2001 truly was the last time original hardware would find itself on the main stage, as the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox began their Godzilla-like battle for the consumer dollar. Which makes the dynamic in question even more interesting. The PlayStation, and to a larger degree the PlayStation 1, would hide the next 20 years of trends in plain sight. So this year, we're focusing on that, the top 10 trends that are still moving the industry today, in order of importance from lowest to highest. Number 10. Mimics. Mimics are the games that see something great and try to mimic everything about it without blatantly ripping it off. This actually applies to games within the same company, as well as rival offerings. For example, as the runaway success of Tony Hawk Pro Skater continued, Activision would apply the formula and control scheme to Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX. Acclaim would snatch that vibe and pump it into Dave Mirra, and obviously this year's version of Dave Mirra Maximum Remix. Gunfighter The Legend of Jesse James would unabashedly enjoy being Namco's Time Crisis in the Old West, complete with the ducking move. If you've ever found yourself in today's world, sighing heavily and thinking, man, another game that's just Fortnite, congrats, you found a mimic. Number 9. Girl power. Being a girl or even a woman gamer can be pretty brutal. Despite the obvious universal appeal of games like Crash Bandicoot, Final Fantasy, and the other company offerings like Zelda and Mario, up until the PlayStation, the market really wasn't there for the female audience. As the PlayStation enters its twilight years, the foundation entry point for young girl gamers would finally find a strong, definitive voice. Besides the obligatory Barbie, more companies were willing to take a chance on a very untapped yet extremely important demographic. Games like the Mary-Kate and Ashley series, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Rugrats Totally Angelica would begin knocking down the walled garden, allowing aspiring gamers of all ages and sexes to join in on the fun. There was one game, however, that truly and unabashedly and gleefully allowed the female class to kick down barriers one step at a time. And that brings us to number 8. The Accessory Games. It would be pure folly to deny the literal impact Dance Dance Revolution had on the hobby and industry. From those of us that fell off after one step to those who could do both pads with their back turned to the screens, Konami's musical masterpiece embraced the player no matter who they were, regardless of age, sex, race, or physicality. Everyone was involved in the aptly named revolution. Here in the 8th spot, however, the bigger focus is on what DDR came with, the dance pad. After living off nothing but light guns and memory cards, the American audience would finally enjoy an accessory not seen since the original NES. As I covered in the original 20th anniversary video years ago, Dance Dance Revolution would give American companies the go-ahead on going crazy for decades to come. From competing dancing games to giant plastic instruments to the eventual toys-to-life craze, the DualShock was suddenly an option to enjoy a game rather than the main focus. Granted, this craze had already been in Japan for years with the PlayStation, but it was well worth the wait heading into the PlayStation 2 era here in America. Number 7. Support groups. Support games can arrive at different stages in a console's life, but here in 2001 we're discussing them as the extraction team. Publishers know most people don't need to have the latest and greatest right away, so they need to appeal to current owners and latecomers. As many folks ran off to the PlayStation 2, developers were still dropping AAA parties on the original hardware. Metal Slug X, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, Dragon Warrior 7, Tales of Destiny 2, Hoshigami, and more would provide top-notch entertainment to the holdouts, refusing to cut quality and continue pushing the aging hardware to its limits. Number 6. Coping mechanisms. September 11th, 2001 was a tragic moment in an already violent world, but the impact it made on the industry was both profound and, more importantly, required. At the moment, several games across multiple systems were either cancelled, held back, or modified. In regards to the Living History project, Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro and Siphon Filter 3 would be pulled back and edited to respect those that died in the attack. Spider-Man 2 would see several level names changed and the final battle in the Twin Towers be converted to a regular building. Siphon Filter 3's artwork would remove any visual or written references that could be taken as a reference to the tragedy. This was more than just a moment in time, however. The act of respectfully censoring the games brought in the question no one was really willing to ask until then. Just how far could games go when dealing with real-world tragedies and emotional subject matter? While the question would linger far into the PlayStation 2 and Xbox era, the answers would begin to emerge in the PlayStation 3 era. Independent developers, starting on the PC side of things, would begin focusing on the emotional side of life. Games like Limbo, that tried to understand death, or That Dragon Cancer, which dealt with a real cancer battle, and What Remains of Edith Finch, which guided players on a tragic family history, were emotional and thought-provoking experiences that allowed players to reflect on their own existence. These bold new explorations continue to this day, stronger than ever. Number 5. The Pallbearers. Despite the grim name, these are the games that carry a system to their final resting place. They may not be the last games on the system, but they are the last games in their series for the hardware. One last glorious ride into the sunset before the next release forces the player to upgrade the hardware. Games like Mega Man X6, Point Blank 3, Time Crisis Project Titan, Fear Effect 2, and Twisted Metal Small Brawl would all provide hours of blasting, smashing, and leaping while players saved their pennies for the next iteration of the hardware. Number 4. Sporting Chances. We didn't know it at the time, but sports fans were heading towards a dismal future. In 2001, they still had choices in their favorite ball games. Baseball fans could choose from High Heat, MLB, and Triple Play. Armchair quarterbacks had the choice of Madden or NFL Game Day. As time would move on, various factors would lead to Electronic Arts essentially having a monopoly on almost every sports genre out there. The loss of choice has allowed EA Sports to do whatever they please, regardless of how little that is, with their franchises. Too busy creating gambling mechanics to improve core gameplay ones. Hang in there, guys. It'll hopefully change. Number 3. Retro Forever. It was way more obvious in the Japanese library, but the American PlayStation quietly kept pegging away at the permanent residency of retro video games. 2001 saw the release of Final Fantasy Chronicles, the Anniversary Edition for Atari, and Castlevania Chronicles. As the industry transitioned to new hardware, more and more compilations like this, especially in the arcade realm, would become a new standard. Capcom, Midway, and Namco would continue releasing arcade compilations, and as online functionality became the norm, so too did retro game releases. Today, the very games we played on the PlayStation 1 and 2 have become the retro games we play today, alongside the laggy legends on the Switch servers and compilation releases. Number 2. Child's Play. It's no surprise that a game system is nearing its end of life cycle in the sudden release of children's games. As old decks are handed down, the younger crowd need their own library of games. Sony and their third-party publishers embrace this with open arms. From Sony publishing various Disney games, to every license from Cubix, Digimon, Blue's Clues, Lego, and even The Land Before Time kept the hits coming. The demand for games was so strong that Take-Two would end up licensing several of the Disney games away from Sony and publish them under their own global software namesake. With the backwards compatibility of the PlayStation 2, this meal ticket would finally find a foothold in the regular life cycle of the modern era. All this would come to a head when Minecraft released in 2011. A Lego-like world of infinite possibility came to PC. A playland like no other. Everyone from children to adults found a home in the cubed world. As it slowly made its way to consoles alongside Skylanders and Disney Infinity, the metaphorical children's table now had just as much retail space as the adult one. And finally, budget gaming. PC gamers have taken this for granted for some time, but consoles really didn't plant the flag into budget games until the PlayStation. Originally born in Japan under the Simple series, where new games would cost a measly $10 to $15. Scaled back in production values, but not the gameplay, these would essentially become the mobile games of the console world. Bite-sized nuggets of fun for the thrifty gamer, or for someone who just needed something to do before the next big blockbuster. As discussed in the What If episode, budget titles eliminated the sales requirements of the greatest hits library, offering an inexpensive experience on day one. 2001 saw a literal parade of budget releases, including some of the most beloved games featured right here on Game-Rave TV. Skydiving Extreme, Board Game Top Shop, The Bombing Islands, King of Fighters 99, and many more were available on store shelves, ready for hungry consumers. As the industry shifted online and connectivity became a staple in the hardware, the cost removal of physicality producing a game helped budget titles grow exponentially. A $25 gift card for the PlayStation Store can nab someone anywhere from one of a handful of games in one shopping spree. This is easily demonstrated with the PC Online store Steam, where literally thousands of games can be had for pennies on the dollar, allowing players to rack up infinite libraries of games to choose from, with way more coming down the pike. And with that, 2001 and the Living History Project comes to a close. 2002 will see the new releases drop significantly to just 65 games in a calendar year. 65! Back in 1998, that would have just been November. But yeah, there you go, guys. 2002, which will be next year for 2022, is going to be a very slow year for the Living History Project. So don't expect the front head banner on GameRave.com to change all that much. But yeah, like this 2001 was the last true year for the PlayStation as far as mainstream goes, and it went out fighting. Now, obviously, we still have a few more years to go, but as the releases start trickling away, people were focusing on the GameCube and PlayStation 2 and Xbox. But the PlayStation just refused to die thanks to the backwards compatibility, and it really was just a transformative year, like everything else before. Do you guys have a favorite genre you're into? Not necessarily fighting or, say, racing, but like budget titles or, guilty pleasures, if you will, things like that. Comment below. If I don't see you guys online, have a fantastic and safe new year. Wear your masks, get vaccinated, boosted, whatever. We're never going to get out of this. Be safe. I will see you next year. Have a great one.